Hello, my name's Paul, and this is Legacy Tales. During lockdown, I've set myself a challenge to interview people and discover their amazing life stories. This month, I'm joined by Danny Roberts, schools and youth worker for Logos Ministries International, and this is his legacy tale. Okay, great. Well, this is Legacy Tales, and I have another great guy with me, someone who is Liverpudlian, so English by born, but living in Northern Ireland. So I'm just going to get him to introduce himself and tell us a little bit about himself.
Yeah, so my name is Danny. I'm 32, and as Paul's already said, I was born in Liverpool, lived in Liverpool for most of my life, and then I got married in 2012 to my wife Faith, and I moved over to Northern Ireland. So I've been living here for nearly 8 years now, which is quite a while. Haven't quite lost the accent just yet. Still hanging on for now. But yeah, I've been living here 8 years, and we have two children. I have a little girl, Annabelle, who's 5, and a little boy, Jonah, who's 3. And we are due to have our third child in less than 4 weeks now.
Wonderful news, wonderful news. So you've been living there 8 years now. I suppose that almost classifies you as a Celt, right?
I think so. I'd like to probably not. Well, I suppose so. I kind of see. It depends on who you speak to, I suppose, because I'm at this weird stage now where anybody who I speak to from Liverpool, they all say, you don't sound like you're from here anymore. And anyone from Northern Ireland says, oh, you sound so much like Liverpool. So I've kind of become a bit of a nomad, really. I kind of don't really belong anywhere.
You have dual citizenship, brother.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what it is. And how have you all coped as a family during lockdown?
It's been okay. I think, like anybody, I think it's always hard at times. I think being able to just suddenly have freedoms taken away from you, I suppose. I would do a lot of face-to-face work similar to yourself, going out and about. I work for a missionary organisation here in Northern Ireland, and as part of the work that I do with LMI, we travel all over the country, going into secondary schools, preaching at churches every week. So to suddenly have that taken away from you was quite strange. But it's all about routine, I think, and we've kind of got used to it. We're homeschooling our daughter. Little man is kind of doing different projects and activities and things like that.
Right.
And yeah, I'm working from home, preaching, doing a lot of recordings and different things like that. So we've got used to it. We've got used to it over time. It's a bit weird. I think I'll have to get used to when things go back to normal. I was saying to someone today, I'll have to get used to not going to church in my tracksuit bottoms with a cup of tea and a back massager on, which is what I've been doing. But we'll get used to it.
You'll get used to it in the end. So, Danny, you are obviously Liverpudlian born.
Yep.
So, can you tell us, as part of the questions we've been asking really, is what's your earliest memory of Jesus and of church and that side of things? What's your earliest memory? I presume it's in Liverpool.
Yeah, it would be. I didn't grow up in a Christian family. My mum and dad weren't Christians. They weren't churchgoers when I was born. My mum and dad very much were probably the opposite end of the scale to that, really. My mum and dad were big partiers, big drinkers, and they kind of lived for the weekend, really, and just spent a lot of time just going out and drinking. And my earliest memories, I think, of sitting in pubs and clubs, and even in my granny's house, she had a full working bar in her house, and they had parties every weekend, and that's kind of what I grew up in my early years. Just no real recollection of church or of hearing about God. You didn't have a Bible in the house or anything. And then I remember our lives changing very, very quickly. My mum's parents both died very suddenly. Not too far apart. My granddad died first, and then my grandma just after. And it really made my mum, it kind of spiraled my mum a little bit out of control. She got depressed. She just sort of couldn't really get out of bed in the mornings. And my dad was involved in all sorts of different dubious activities, and he was away quite a lot. And I remember my mum telling us about how these people had knocked on the door one day. These Jehovah's Witnesses had come to visit my mum, told her a little bit about what they believe, and through a long series of events that I won't go into, my dad didn't know much about religion, but knew that he didn't like what they were telling her. So tried to find out more, and it led him down this path of speaking to people and getting involved and finding Christian books that they give him for him to start reading about. And he decided one day that he was going to take us all to church, basically to find out a little bit more about what Christianity was all about, and basically to prove that he was a good person. Because if he went to church, good people go to church, so that means it's guaranteed that we'll be able to go to heaven and get my mum's questions answered. So it ended up us all going along to church one Sunday morning, and I remember being about 6 years old, getting dragged along to the church, not too far away from where we lived in Liverpool. We lived sort of in a council estate area by Everton's football ground, and we got taken along to this church. For me, was the first time ever outside of maybe doing a Christmas service in assembly with school. They used to take us along to the Church of England church down the road. This was my first experience of, as a family, going into a church, hearing the Bible being preached, and going to Sunday school and all these different things.
And what was your takeaway from that, from your first meeting into quite an alien environment, I imagine?
Yeah, it was a strange environment, and I think it was a mixture of reactions, really. We went along to the Sunday school, and the Sunday school seemed fine. It was nice. Everybody was friendly enough. They sang songs. They gave us loads of sweets. So, I mean, it's always a winner. As a 6-year-old boy, if you go into a place and someone gives you a load of sweets, it's a great occasion. So we enjoyed that. It was good. But one of the big things I do remember from it is that my mum and dad, the first time obviously we went on that Sunday morning, it was the day after the National Lottery had started. Right. And my mum and dad had done the National Lottery. They'd had a big party in our house on the Saturday night. Everyone was round until 4 or 5 in the morning, all had the lottery tickets because they were all going to become millionaires. So they'd done the lottery on the Saturday night. Obviously none of them won. And then the Sunday morning, my dad picked us all up and we went along to the church at 11 o'clock, and the man preached on the National Lottery and sort of the sin of gambling and different things like this. And I just remember my dad coming out of the church fuming, just really, really angry about what the man had said. He thought that the man was speaking directly to him because he must have knew something about him and knew something about his life and what they'd done. And he came out sort of kicking off, swearing, saying that he was never going to go back there ever again.
And did he?
He did. He did. Oh. And I think it's through the grace of God, really. As I said, my mum and dad were in a position where they didn't really like church, didn't know nothing about it, believed that they were good people, so they didn't need religion or anything like that. No. But something kept drawing them back, and something kept taking them back, and week by week we went along. And to be fair, my mum and dad were really committed. We went along Sunday morning, Sunday evening, midweek meeting. Me and my brother got taken to all of it.
Wow.
And every time my dad came out really angry, saying he was never going to go back there, they're all scumbags in that church and all, and kept sort of having a big issue with what they were saying. But then week by week kept going back and kept going back.
Amazing.
Kept going back.
Because I've spoken to a few Christians on here, and the highest number of meetings someone's gone to on a Sunday, I think, was 5. So how many of you would you say?
We had, when we first started going along, we went to the Sunday school, which was before church, and then you had the Sunday morning service, and then we had the Sunday evening service, and then they had a sort of fellowship meeting afterwards. So there was
that's full
on the Sunday.
That is quite a Sunday.
It is.
Sunday. Yeah.
You know, the Sunday, the fellowship service that had sandwiches and also, you know, you don't really. It was a kind of a nicer service.
Yeah. Because I was three times a day myself. I had morning, Sunday school in the afternoon, and then evening. But being in that environment, and now you're going almost four times on a Sunday. What changes in your life then? So obviously, Dad is going week in, week out, hearing about Jesus, and then saying, "I'm never going to go back." But obviously, there is something that's drawing him back, along with all of you. So what changes in your life then? Because obviously, to do what you're doing now and to be committed to, even in lockdown, making videos and wanting to tell people about Jesus. What changed then for that 8-year-old to now?
A big series of events, I suppose.
Okay.
We were obviously going along to the church week by week. My mum and dad were listening to what was being said, getting annoyed about it, leaving again, but we were getting taken back week by week by week. My dad obviously eventually became a Christian. My dad, before all of this, was involved in all sorts of different activities that's not worth going into on this, but it involved in insurance fraud and shipping guns and all sorts of different things across countries. And he suddenly had this huge change that he realized that he needed Jesus in his life. Yeah. And he became a Christian, which was amazing to be able to see that transformation. My mum had a conversation with the pastor at one point in the church, and he was very good. We lived in a very sort of rough, deprived area in Liverpool. If anybody knows anything about Walton, it's a really, really rough, gang-filled area. A lot of, especially teenagers and young people, a lot of people die every year in that area due to gang violence and stuff. So it's a very rough area, and the pastor in that church was very ready for it. He was a very good character to have working in that area. And I remember him speaking to my mum, and she always recalls in her testimony, she says about the fact that she said to the pastor that she doesn't want to give up drinking, she doesn't want to give up partying, she doesn't want to do anything like that. She wants to keep her life. And the pastor said to her, he said, that's fine. He said, just become a Christian the day before you die. He said, and then everything will be fine. Live your life, enjoy what you're doing. He said, and then the day before you die, he said, become a Christian and everything will be fine. He said, what, you've got what, 50, 60 years? He said, you hope. He said, unless something happens. He said, in which case you may have 20 years if you get ill. He said, or you might get hit by a bus in the next week, in which case you're already too late. He said, so worth thinking about it. And that's what challenged me mum. And she thought about it, spoke about it. The church gave her a lot of help when it came to the drinking problems that she had and things like that. And she became a Christian as well, which was amazing. And we've seen this transformation in our parents, that they were suddenly, my dad was there. We were going along to church. We were spending time together as a family. But at the same time, for the likes of me and my brother, I've got a younger brother as well, and the two of us were taken along to church with our parents every week. And one of the things that a lot of people know, obviously, about Liverpool, it's a massive footballing community. Yeah. And there was nothing better of a weekend than getting out with your friends into the street, playing football and enjoying yourselves. And suddenly we had to go along to church every Sunday, to Sunday school, to the morning service, to the evening service. We were out doing the fellowship meeting in the night time with all the church got together. And we had no time to be able to play football with our friends and enjoy it. So we kind of hated being there. I think after a little while, once the novelty wore off. So we got dragged along every week. And one of the saving graces was that we were one of the only kids, really, that went to the Sunday night service.
Okay.
So what used to happen, we'd go in the Sunday night, we'd take a colouring book with us, normally with Bible verses, pictures in them. And there'd be a guy at the back of the church who'd give us, like, toffees and stuff and sweets to be able to eat during the service, which was great. And we'd get down during the sermon and colour in this book, just leaning against the pew while service was going on. And I remember one Sunday night in particular, and this will show the eccentricness of the pastor that I've been telling you about. That one Sunday night, I'd forgot the colouring book that I took with me every Sunday. And it got to the sermon part. My brother went down to do his colouring, and I tried to sort of sneak down onto the floor, and I thought I can watch him or have a little sleep or something during the sermon. And my mum dragged me back up onto the seat, and she said, "You forgot your colouring book, so you can listen to this man, because it's punishment to listen to a sermon." So I had to sit there as this 7-year-old child sitting there listening to this preacher, and he was preaching through the book of Revelation, which is, wow, as you know, as someone who does a lot of preaching, it's quite a hard book to tackle at the best of times. Never mind on a Sunday evening. So he was going through the book of Revelation, and he was explaining all about heaven and about hell and the differences in what the Bible speaks about in regards to those subjects. And he decided to give this illustration. And he said to one of the elders who was sitting in the pew, he said, "Do me a favour, come to the front." So he came to the front, and he said, "I want you to close your eyes for me." So he closed his eyes, and he said, "I want you to hold out your hand." So he held his hand just out like that out in front. And while the man's eyes were closed, the pastor took a lighter out of his pocket and lit it underneath the man's hand. The man, as you can imagine, like any normal person, screamed and pulled his hand away. And he just said to him, he just turned to him and he said, "Did that hurt?" And he said, "Yeah." And he just turned to everyone else and said, "Imagine how much hotter it's going to be in hell."
Wow.
And as you can imagine, as a normal person listening to that on a Sunday, you would think, what an absolute lunatic. But as a 7-year-old child sitting watching this, I was petrified and I didn't know what was going on. As somebody who'd obviously took radiators, put your hand in the fire, all the rest of this different stuff, you knew how hot something like that was. And through ways that I suppose only God can do, it really prompted me to start asking questions. I remember being at home the next few nights, just asking my mum and dad, just saying to them, surely, like, I'm a good person. I'm not like the people that we see on the news. I don't do bad things. Surely, like, I'm not going to go to hell because I'm only 7 years old. I'm a good person. And it gave them a chance to be able to tell me about the fact that all of us have done something wrong. Yeah. About the fact that even if we only do one thing wrong, whether that be stealing something or talking badly to our mum and dad, disobeying our parents, doing anything like that, it makes us imperfect. And we have to be perfect to be able to get to heaven. And even if we do just that one thing wrong, it makes our lives imperfect. So it means that none of us can go to heaven. But yet there's been a way made for us to be able to go through Christ dying for us and giving his life and rising again so that we can have our sins forgiven and creating that way for us. And I give a chance for my mum and dad to be able to clearly explain that to me. And I remember one evening, it was the middle of the summer, and I remember my dad used to read us a Bible story, pray with us before we went to sleep. And normally he'd pray, and he prayed for ages. It used to take forever. It's this classic conservative 25-minute prayer. And he used to like poke us at the end, and he'd be like, "Say amen." He'd be like, "Amen." And go back to sleep. And this one night, I'd stayed awake throughout the entire thing. I think he was more shocked when he opened his eyes than I was. And it's just because it was weighing on me so much. And I said to my dad that I wanted to ask Jesus to come into my life and to forgive me. And I sat down at the side of the bed with my dad and prayed and asked God to come into my life. And that's sort of where it began, really, as a 7-year-old boy.
Oh, amazing. So you are 8 years old?
So the summer not far off being 8, yeah.
Yeah, that is amazing. And I just want to, if someone's listening to this, I just want you to appreciate this, is that in the Bible it says that we've all done things wrong. But I want to hear the story here of you and the family, that no one is too far gone. Perhaps somebody's listening to this and they think, oh, well, I've done too many wrong things. I've done this and I've done that. Just hear this story. Your dad was someone who was on, if you were looking at a piece of paper, you'd say, no hope.
Yeah.
And yet, amazingly, changed forever. So much so that you, as a young boy, sees this transformation and goes, well, what's going on there? And after hearing it for yourself, you have now committed your life to Jesus as well. So, Danny, can you tell us then, what difference has it had in your life, having Jesus in your life?
It changed. It's hard to explain, I suppose, in a sentence. It changes everything. It changes everything about you. Everything that you thought that life was all about, everything that you strived for, all the aspirations that you have, are completely transformed and changed. I think one of the things that adds to that is that when I got a little bit older, I went to a secondary school, and there's a lot of, as I said, it's big in the area that I was living in, Liverpool. Gang culture is massive, and all you ever want to do is fit in. And I went through a whole series of events when I went to secondary school where I tried to hide everything that I believed, where I was ashamed to a certain degree. I didn't want people to know. They got to a stage when I was about 16, I'd hid it for a long time. I got involved in gang culture and started breaking into houses and doing all sorts of different stupid things, really. And it got to a stage where my friends that I was spending time with and hanging around with found out that I was a Christian. That I went along to church with my parents, and I said to them, like, oh yeah, I go to church just because my mum and dad make me. And I got into that situation, and they all abandoned me.
Wow.
They battered me at one point. I got dragged into an alleyway and got kicked by these boys, just because I was a Christian. They didn't want to be hanging around with someone who was a Bible basher. And I faced this situation when I was about 16, where I suddenly had no one. Didn't really have any friends. People who I thought were my friends had suddenly abandoned me.
Yeah.
And it made me sit down and think. And my dad told me the story that we find in the New Testament in the book of Mark. And I remember after that whole situation, I remember sitting with my dad, and he told me the story about the farmer that had a great harvest one year. And he had barns, and he knew that those barns were too small. So he pulled down the barns and he built even greater barns. And he spent his whole summer building these great barns so that he could store all of his fruit and all of his crops. He got it all done, and he said, right, I can sit back and I can eat, I can drink, I can be merry. And God said to him, you fool, tonight you're going to die. And then all of that stuff that you've got, where's it going to go?
Yeah.
And my dad said to me, he said, that's what your life is like. He said, you have spent your life striving for popularity and to fit in and to have material things.
Yeah.
He said, but really, he said, you have forgotten about what you learned when you were younger. You have forgotten about Jesus. You have forgotten about the sacrifice that he gave for you and the commitment that you made to have him in your life and to trust and to serve him. And it made me sit down and really reassess and to think about my life and about what God had done for me. And I realized the importance of spending my life striving to be able to serve God, that God has done everything for me, that although I didn't deserve it, he gave his only son to die on a cross so that I can have eternal life. And the least I can do is spend my life striving to be able to do what I can to be able to serve God. And in that moment, I remember as a 16-year-old, I realized how my life needed to be different, about how, yes, we want to have financial security. Yes, we want to be able to have things. We want to be able to look after our family. We want to be able to provide nice things for them. I have 2 kids, and I want them to have a nice bike and nice clothes and a roof over their heads and all these different things. But nothing comes before my relationship with God. And I think I realized that then. And when you now look at the bigger picture, sometimes we have situations in our lives where we sit and we look at what's going on. Look at it the minute with lockdown and everything like that. And we get worried, we get anxious, we get fearful about what's happening. And we don't really we don't see the bigger picture. And I think when I look back at the situations that I went through and the pressure that I had to be able to be popular and have all these things as a teenager, I look back at the bigger picture now, and I don't even live in the same country as the people that I was striving for admiration of when I was in secondary school. I don't see them anymore. I don't live in the same country as them. I don't, my life has gone completely in a direction that I was never ever expecting it to go. But yet my relationship with God has stayed the same, because he's never changed. God doesn't change. It says in the Bible, doesn't it, that he's the same yesterday, today, and forever. And whether I've traveled across the country, whether I've gone through a lockdown, whether I've gone through all the different difficulties that we go through in life, one of the things that is the foundation of everything, I suppose, that has changed in my life is the fact that I know that God is there for me. I know that no matter what happens, he is there, that he listens to me, he guides me, and I know that even when bad things happen in my life, and we all go through bad situations, no one's ever promising you that Christianity leads to an amazing life with no difficulties, because it doesn't. But what it does promise us is that we have a God who cares for us and looks after us and who works everything for our good. And that's, I suppose, what was the big difference that it made in my life.
That's amazing. And obviously you're now doing that. We met on Beatrition a few years ago now. And you're doing that now in Northern Ireland, working with young people and with children in schools and churches and things like that. And I know you've got young children, and as part of this series, really, the vision is to help provide people with an opportunity to pass on their legacy, pass on their story, I guess. So I wonder, when your time has come, what would you like your legacy to be? when people say, "Oh, Danny Roberts, he's gone to heaven, he's gone to glory," what would you like that sum up to be of Danny Roberts? What would you like to have passed on to the next generation?
That is a big question, Paul.
Thanks.
I think, especially as you said, once you get older, I spend a lot of time, as you said, speaking in churches and speaking in schools. I go around secondary schools all over the country, speaking to thousands of young people every year. And closer to home, then I've got my own kids. I do stuff in my own church and work with the children and the young people and young adults in my own church. And I think one of the things that really strikes you is that, as you said, we strive so much for things and for people to like us and all this different stuff. But I think I've realised over time, doing the work that I've been able to do for God and seeing the things that I've done, that I've seen globally as I've went and lectured overseas and stuff, is that I'd like to be known as somebody that done all that they could for God, that took every chance available to be able to tell people about Jesus. I think it's hard, and we don't always do it. We fail sometimes, and there's times when I know that I interact with people who are angry towards Christianity and different things, and I maybe don't take the chance in the way that I'd like to. Sure. But I'd like to be remembered as somebody that done all that they could to tell people about Jesus with love and compassion, because that's why we do it. Because we don't do it just because it's a job. We don't, and I'm sure you're the same as me. We don't do it because it's a job. We don't do it because we get paid. We do it because we love and care for people, and we want to be able to tell them the greatest news that they could ever know. So I think that's how I'd like to be remembered.
Fantastic. Danny, as someone who knows you, who's worked alongside you, it's always a pleasure to be with you. And it's even if it's over Zoom, it's wonderful to see you and to be able to chat with you. And I know I can hear your passion for Jesus, and I just want to thank you for coming on and for sharing that with the rest of us. So, Danny, thank you so much for being with us, mate.
Thank you for having me, Paul. Really appreciate it.
Pleasure. Thanks, Danny. That was great. I want to thank Danny for taking time out to be part of this project, and I hope it's been a blessing to you listening as well. If you'd like to know more about the Christian faith, please get in touch by email at paul.davis@countiesuk.org or via our social media at Legacy Tales Podcast. Please do like, share and subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss the next one. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you for another Legacy Tale.